This is an auric chakra report from 5 years ago. And you can see my throat chakra was really suffering, low grade, and imbalances in my heart. Doesn't surprise me. Like studio and ASCAP and AFTRA and copyrights and contracts, and I'm just really getting how much of my life was tied up in the music business. You know, like really, really heavily tied up. I had this folder full of things to read later, and how many times are we going to actually read those things? I made this for my mom and those old computers. I love you very much, Mother, and I mean it. Certificates. I got 3rd place in a spelling bee. I would not doubt if there was only 3 people, but it's all overwhelming. Wow, look at this. I did that. It's all ego. It's ego stuff. Noticing my ego going, like you have to show, in other words, like you have to show this painting before you give it away. Like somebody has to see it. Or before you burn it, like somebody has to see it. Somebody has to know that you're talented. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so those are parts of me, like, I'm going to look at today, like my ego is really struggling right now. Yeah, so what that looks like is me, you know, going in and creating the possibility that I am talented, because there's a reason why I'm fighting to keep all of this evidence. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason why I'm fighting to keep all of this evidence that I'm talented. And it's because somewhere deep down in my subconscious, I don't believe that I am. And so I have to have the evidence to prove it, that I am. And that's why it's feeling so hard for me to let these things go. This is a program from the state softball championship game in high school that we ended up winning, and that I sat the bench. And you could see Rachel, 22 has always been my number. You see that my stats are 0. Why do we keep these things? Newspaper clippings and PSAT scores, all from high school. My very first business card. I was 13 years old. I was always acting weird and happy on the outside, but how I felt on the inside, nobody knew. I was always trying to make myself happy by making people laugh, and it worked until people stopped laughing. As I'm reading, these stories that I wrote about my life when I was maybe preteen, and how I was even talking about like earlier in childhood, and I would use words like, I felt confused. It was hard for me to make friends. I was weird. I was annoying. We tend to look back at our childhood and see it as peachy keen, especially early childhood, especially kindergarten, and then just looking back at my writing and seeing my recollection of kindergarten, of grade school, and having it be kind of horrible in some ways. It makes me feel better about letting go of all this energy, it makes me, understand what I tell my clients, which is like, nobody's going to understand you, because it's oftentimes, it doesn't make sense what you came into this world with this time around. You could have had what seemed to look like from the outside a perfect childhood, perfect family environment, and still be burdened with so much on your heart and on your subconscious, so many beliefs about yourself that are literally inexplainable if you were to look just directly at your environment in this lifetime. And as I'm looking through these stories of myself that I wrote, my own accounts of my experience of life, I'm doing clearings. You know, I'm putting all that I know to work and doing clearings so that I never have to live a life or experience myself like this again. I'll have, you know, the freedom to experience myself how I want to experience myself as I am, you know, without all of these identities, without this feeling of, from the very beginning of life, of being an outcast. Where did that even come from? Like, that never came from my parents. I could tell you that right now. My parents would never, ever in a million zillion years. So, yeah. I really just caught some like major identities in and around friendship. You know, when reading these letters from my friends in the past. Because my recollection of our experience was kind of having a fake friendship, and it didn't mean that it just meant that that's how it was perceived to me, because I didn't feel like I could take it in, and I didn't have the consciousness that that's what happened. But as I looked back, as I'm reading these letters at the friendships, I saw myself as just this like kind of like in a cocoon, like the friendship happening, but me not actually experiencing it, you know, the intimacy. This process of purging all of these things is so powerful, because I'm feeling into these identities and really seeing them, and I'm doing clearings as I go along. I remember my best friend, you know, even from 4 or 5 years ago, she said, you know, Rachel, you're a hard nut to crack. In other words, like, you kind of have this thick outer shell, and you're kind of hard to connect with. And this is my best friend, you know, but she probably, to be fair, had an equally hard shell to crack, which is why energetically we were best friends, you know. But that being said, you know, I just went in and I cleared all of those identity clusters that I felt, you know, psychically around who I saw myself as a friend and what my experience of friendship was. And it makes a lot of sense why I would have such a poor or like an undesirable experience of friendship, having had so much trauma and drama around friendship in my experience. You know, everything from being bullied as a kid, like severely bullied as a kid, to like an experience of being abandoned by a group of friends in junior high. You know, we underestimate the power of childhood experiences and how they dictate how we feel about ourselves. And I think from those experiences, I created in my subconscious that, you know, I'm somebody that's not a good friend, or I'm somebody that can't be trusted, or that friends can't be trusted, or that friendships are wrong, that having friends are wrong, that friendships are unsafe. You know, I mean, the list goes on. And now that I've cleared, you know, all of these false beliefs about myself, I have so much compassion for those parts of me. And I also just cleared that I'm someone that regrets everything. So it feels good to just have the compassion instead of making myself wrong for being or perceiving myself as who I felt I had to perceive myself in order to be safe. You know, clearing these old identities is not just about clearing the identities that are perceived as negative to society or even negative to your own subconscious. Clearing the past is also about clearing identities that tend to tie you down, and not give you options to make other choices if other choices should feel right. For instance, clearing the identity that you're a teacher's pet, or that you're everyone's best friend, or that you're always there for everyone. Clearing the identity that you're like the most popular, or that you're the most acknowledged person, you know, because then if you don't, if you decide to clear those and move forward with the clean slate, then you're not moving forward with the expectation that you be those things to yourself, and you're also not moving forward with a judgment of others not being those things that you had held yourself to that particular standard. And you know, often when we put ourselves on a pedestal, it feels like a lonely place to be. Because if we put ourselves on a pedestal and if we place our identities in a place that looks like, you know, I'm the best person at math, or I'm the best speller, or I'm the smartest, or I'm the most kind, or I'm the friendliest, then we're separating ourselves from everybody else. And nobody wants to be lonely. Yeah. So this has been really powerful. I kept very, very few things. And when my soul said, you know, yes, that I wanted to keep that, when I asked myself, it wasn't about me inevitably showing those things to anyone. And I probably won't. It was very clear that those things that my soul said yes to were what I wanted to keep to remind myself of my own talent. Like, to remind myself of who I am, to remind myself of the love that exists there for me. Not to share with anybody else. Not to go like, ooh, look at all these amazing friends I've had, or look at all these places I've been, or look at how kind I am, or look at how constructive or productive or smart I've been or am. It was just really about, hey, like, look at yourself, you know, look at yourself, look at who you are, and reprogram to the point where you can see yourself as such, to the point where you don't need to keep anything anymore.